members of the press, I would be surprised if anyone objects to the recording. And if someone would like a copy of the recording afterwards, we can make that available. Also, as you know, we're going to be showing a video during this press conference. We will make that video available for your downloading during the press conference. So what we'll do is we'll post it as a link in the chat section, and you should be able to download it during the press conference. If at some point or for some reason you're having trouble with that, that's fine too. You can contact me afterwards and I can provide you with a copy, but hopefully that'll be done easily and given to you easily. I've been asked if someone has permission, my permission to, or our permission to record on your end. You do. As I said, we are recording and we can make this available, but if you have the mechanism to record on your end, then that is fine, or even just portions of the video. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So I'm going to introduce anyone or everyone that's going to be speaking today. My name is Riley Ross. I'm with the law firm of Mincy Fitzpatrick Ross. We also have Paul Hetsnecker, who is with the law office of Paul Hetsnecker, and Marnie Jo Snyder, the law offices of Marnie Jo Snyder. We are also on our team of lawyers, Kevin Mincy with Mincy Fitzpatrick Ross, and also Michael Cord with the law offices of Michael Cord. And together we represent over 230 plaintiffs that were brutalized by the Philadelphia police last summer. We are here today marking the 1-year anniversary of the second day of that brutalization by the Philadelphia police. Our clients consist of individuals who were living in West Philadelphia last year on May 31st, that were many of them just residents of the area that were minding their own business when the Philadelphia police began to tear gas their neighborhood and brutalize them when they in some cases sought refuge by leaving their home because they had tear gas coming in. And when they were outside, they were met with brutality in the form of tear gas and also in some cases police bullets, rubber bullets. We also represent individuals who were protesting peacefully on I-676 on June 1st of 2020, and were met with police brutality in the form of tear gas and rubber bullets, actual physical assaults and the like. And the reason that we're holding this press conference today is to mark the year anniversary, to make it clear that the work is still being done, that there's work that needs to be done with regards to reform, and to talk about some of those reform efforts that we'd like to see happen and that we are working on. We also will introduce a video that includes footage from the 676 police brutality, some that has not been shared before through us and on your networks. We will, as I said before, give you access to that video. You'll be able to download it during this press conference. So what we're going to do today, the outline, Paul will begin by talking about the history of police brutality in Philadelphia and also about the militarization of police tactics in Philadelphia. I will then come on and introduce the video by giving kind of a little bit of a background about the movement that we're seeing against police brutality. And after the video is played, which is about a little more than 6 minutes long, Marnie will then come on and talk a little bit about our clients. And then Paul and Marnie will conclude with some talks on the reform efforts that are being made. And at that point, we'll take some questions from you. So with that being said, Paul, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Riley. I just want to start out by saying it's an honor to represent each and every one of our plaintiffs. Our clients have demonstrated tremendous courage in stepping forward and bringing this lawsuit to hold the police department and the city accountable, because that's the real issue. The issue is transparency and accountability, and we'll talk about that towards the end. But in order to put this in context, we need to know a little bit about the history of police brutality in this city. Going back decades, going back to when Frank Rizzo was both police commissioner and then subsequent to that, mayor of Philadelphia, there was a deep entrenched culture of historic misconduct, brutality, and institutional racism. And that misconduct and institutional racism has been perpetuated over time. It has been examined by government officials, it's been examined by commissions, examined by reporters and human rights activists. In fact, in 1979, the United States Department of Justice filed a civil rights suit against the City of Philadelphia Police Department based on the systemic misconduct and brutality that had existed for a long period of time. Federal government had to intervene, as they have done in a number of cities throughout this country. What the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests did was spark a renewed effort to focus on police brutality throughout the country, about what modern day policing should be, but also what the history of policing has been in this country. In 1981, the United States Commission on Civil Rights recounted the failure of the police department in Philadelphia to protect the citizens and residents of Philadelphia against a pattern of misconduct and brutality that existed. 1978, 17 years later, 1998 rather, 17 years later, Human Rights Watch reported on the same pattern of misconduct. So we have a decades-old history of systematic brutality, misconduct, and racism. And we have a systematic, essentially a systematic examination by various bodies, reporters, government officials, and human rights advocates that has not led to any systematic or systemic institutional reform. And that's what we're seeking. That's what we are seeking, not only through the course of the litigation, but we're seeking also through various other efforts, grassroots mobilizing efforts, as well as political efforts. We'll talk about that in a minute. So in addition to the Philadelphia Police Department, there were police departments throughout the country that gained a foothold in this notion of warrior policing in response to the expansion of civil rights during the 1960s. The war on crime, the war on drugs became the way in which politically there was a justification for the expansion of federal money that poured into local police departments, including the City of Philadelphia Police Department. The first SWAT teams, Special Weapons and Tactics Units, were established in Los Angeles and Philadelphia. And they were to be used in extraordinary situations, barricaded individuals, where there were violence that threatened public safety. But the militarization of the police over the last few decades has turned the SWAT units, as we saw on I-676 last year, and in West Philadelphia a year ago yesterday. What we saw was the brutal effort on the part of the police department in Philadelphia to utilize military munitions and these tactics against peaceful protesters and residents simply living in their community. The origin of this culture of brutality, as I said, originates from this expansion of warrior police based on this war on crime and war on drugs, this ever expanding effort. In 1997, Congress expanded authorization for the use of weapons to include counterterrorism, following a 1990 congressional authorization for the Defense Department to transfer surplus weapons, vehicles, free of charge to local police departments throughout the country, including the City of Philadelphia. According to the Defense Department, state and local departments have received more than $4.3 billion in military hardware since the program's inception. Following 9/11, in this effort, this failed effort, this misguided effort in counterterrorism, and turning police departments into essentially spy organizations to spy on peaceful protesters and anyone who stands in opposition to government or corporate power, they expanded money into local departments for this purpose. 2011, a report by investigative reporters and journalists revealed that departments throughout this country had received $34 billion in grant funding from the Department of Homeland Security. In 2014, it was reported that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania had received close to 34,000 pieces of military equipment, which were acquired over almost 20 years. Almost 2,000 of these weapons of war were classified as tactical equipment, tanks, mine-resistant vehicles, and automatic weapons. The records show that the Philadelphia Police Department received an armored vehicle and 255 automatic weapons through this program. You're going to see a video in a few minutes, and the question becomes whether that armored vehicle you see in the video was the vehicle that the Philadelphia Police Department acquired through this program. This military style of policing, this warrior style of policing, is antithetical to public safety. It's antithetical to the First Amendment as was reflected last year on I-676, and it's a threat to our democracy. Now, Riley's going to talk a little bit about the origin of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a critical part of our discussion and our examination of what you're going to see in this video. Riley?
Thanks, Paul. So with regards to the police brutality, we all know about the Black Lives Matter movement that was started and continued through the tragic murders of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Michael Brown. The Black Lives movement soon spread across the country to many cities, including Philadelphia, and it is estimated that more than 28 million people took part in the protests last summer. During a pandemic, which reflected not a marginalized protest movement, or as the FBI characterized the movement, as a domestic terroristic threat, but one of the most significant public discriminations in support of civil rights in our history. A shift in the way we as society approach racism and policing and the racism that permeates our entire culture. Now, although the Black Lives Matter movement focused on police brutality, profile stops, and mass incarceration, the impact over the past 12 months has reached every aspect of our lives. The tragic murder of George Floyd brought a resurgence to the movement that reflects century-old struggles to achieve racial justice. Mr. Floyd's on-camera murder did not change the response of law enforcement in Philadelphia. Developed over the course of decades, the peaceful protests that occurred on May 31st and June 1st in 2020 were met with violent and brutal military-style attacks. Our lawsuit serves to answer those brutal attacks. The irony is not lost on us that those who were protesting police brutality were met with police brutality here in Philadelphia. And as you'll see from this video, that police brutality was in full force last summer. And although we are showing you video only from the I-676 protest, again, we are discussing and approaching and addressing also the police brutality that occurred in West Philadelphia. So this time I'm going to show you the video from I-676.
touch your face. Ah! You cool, you cool. You some water, bro? Yeah, you some water? Let's go! Come on! Move! This way.
There are about 100 people, maybe 70 people that are currently being arrested. And I don't know, every once in a while, they'll look up at us and shoot at us.
So this time, Marnie will come down and discuss, give you a little bit of information about our clients.
Good afternoon. Along with the other attorneys that you've seen on this video, and Michael Cord and Kevin Mincy, we represent a group of plaintiffs that are a diverse group of over 230 people who are peaceably protesting against the long history of systemic police misconduct and brutality in this country, and they were met with violence by the Philadelphia Police Department. Some people were otherwise existing in their own neighborhoods or watching the protests go by, and even those people were brutalized. The plaintiffs were subjected to law enforcement's shocking and unlawful actions. Our clients included residents that suffered injuries from tear gas deployed in West Philadelphia. On May 31st, 2020, while walking on the street, sitting on their porch, or even being inside of their homes. They include a grandmother shot walking on the sidewalk, shot in the head with a rubber bullet, a family observing the police attack from their home. They also include a pastor and his family who came to location to observe the demonstration and ended up getting attacked by a SWAT team with tear gas. They also include white people who are willing to use their bodies and privilege to try to protect Black protesters. Our clients include a lawyer that came out to observe the protest and was attacked with tear gas. On June 1st of 2020, our clients, including many who were marching for racial justice and injured by the brutal police attack on I-676, they include a former Israeli soldier shot with rubber bullets, a former naval serviceman, a Vietnam veteran, all peacefully marching for racial justice and all struck with rubber bullets fired by police. Our clients include university students, workers, teachers, educators, activists, and children. On May 31st, in residential and commercial areas in West Philadelphia, police unleashed tear gas and rubber bullets using violent control tactics against peaceful demonstrators. Plaintiffs were among those residents and observers who were present in West Philadelphia and fired upon by police. On June 1st, the largest demonstration, including thousands of people, took place in Center City on the Vine Street Expressway. Police officers on the scene did not attempt to stop any of the protesters who were entering 676. The police officers on the scene allowed them onto the highway. And as protesters marched along the highway, chanting and waving signs, drivers whose cars were stopped by the demonstration were honking their horns and waving at people, high-fiving them as they were protesting. Many drivers and passengers got out of their cars and chanted with the protesters to show their support, and the demonstration had remained peaceable. Without provocation or warning, however, police officers began to fire tear gas at the demonstrators. And as demonstrators began to frantically flee, the police officers continued to fire tear gas and less than lethal munitions at them. Through their use of tear gassing and their positioning of their bodies, police personnel had the crowd controlled and moving up a hill without a way to get away. You'll see that the fence there blocked everyone's passage to even get off the highway. Trying to obey the police commands was impossible. As demonstrators were trapped on that embankment, officers continued to fire tear gas canisters and rubber projectiles, leaving the protesters trapped and suffocating in a cloud of tear gas and smoke. Video recordings made by people at the scene were rapidly posted to social media platforms, showing protesters overcome by the gas, screaming in a disturbing echo of George Floyd's last words, "I can't breathe." The video presented today provides further evidence of this brutal attack. On June 25th, the New York Times published a visual account created by one of our clients based on an online compilation of videos collected from the scene. Based on that report, it was clear that the protest on the Vine Street Expressway was not violent and that the police use of force on protesters was excessive. This newly discovered video compilation provides further evidence that the conclusion and proves that the police violence on the peaceable protesters was in fact unprovoked. The video within hours of the publication of that New York Times video, Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney and Commissioner Danielle Outlaw conducted a news conference in which they both apologized for their use of force against peaceable protesters. Immediately after the news conference, Mayor Kennedy sent a tweet conceding that members of the police department used completely unacceptable force and stated that he is also accountable. No such apology was issued to any of the residents of the West Philadelphia corridor. The video we released today completely refutes the police narrative published last fall and confirms that our clients' collective accounts of what happened on June 1st, 2020 on I-676 was in fact the truth.
Paul, we're going to go to you now if you want to talk about efforts of reform.
Yeah, I'm going to talk in broad strokes. We are currently engaged in negotiations with the city of Philadelphia regarding reforms that our clients seek. But what I can say, without getting into specifics because of those negotiations, is our clients seek the end of paramilitary style munitions on peaceful protests and within residential communities. It's unacceptable. And as Marnie just alluded to, based on the video, we know this kind of brutality is unjustified and unwarranted in our democracy. We also seek, just broadly, transparency and accountability. That's the key to democratic control over police departments, which are essentially untethered by the democratic process. That accountability and control and community control, political control, is reflected in broad efforts by city council, which Marnie will talk about in a minute, but also by our clients who have been fighting and struggling for grassroots reform, many for decades. What we seek is a reordering of priorities within the police department, a shifting of resources away from the warrior policing model to a more accountable model that serves the public by providing resources for both drug treatment and mental health when calls are received for intervention. We also seek a more effective disciplinary process within the police department, better training, and obviously a sense of commitment to uprooting and eradicating the systematic racism within the department. I want to thank my colleagues and the other plaintiffs' teams who have been involved in this effort, and I'm certain that we will have more to report in the future. At this point, I want to turn it over to Marnie to talk a little bit about some of the efforts made outside of the litigation towards these significant reforms. Marnie?
I think on behalf of this team and all the legal teams, we'd really like to thank Councilmember Curtis Jones, his talented staff, and his colleagues on council for the recent repeal of the portion of the Philadelphia Code that created the Police Advisory Board, replacing it with the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. We are grateful that there is going to be true civilian oversight, the police department accountability to the citizens of Philadelphia. And we hope to continue to work with City Council on ways that the police can be held accountable, that there can be more transparency in the system in regards to discipline, in regards to a demilitarization effort. We recognize that any litigation certainly has boundaries, certainly has limitations. We're grateful to the extent that this litigation was helpful in shining a light on things that needed to change in Philadelphia. We hope to work with City Council as the Oversight Board comes into fruition and has rules and regulations that help it form and hold the police accountable for misconduct in the future. So we'd like all of the thanks to go to Councilmember Jones and his staff at this time, and really thank City Council for their efforts.
So at this time, we're going to, well, first of all, you should have seen in the chat up here the link to the video. So if you click on that, you should be able to download it. Again, if anyone's having any problems accessing it, feel free to contact me afterwards and we can provide you with a copy. But this should serve as, in the chat, should serve as you receiving a copy of the video for your use. At this time, we will, actually, I will take off the spotlight so that we can kind of open it up for questions. We'll take a few questions from individuals who may have them, and I hope you're all familiar with the Zoom features. You can just simply raise your hand and I'll call on you for any questions that you may have. Joseph Holden has raised his hand.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to ask the question. Just curious, how many hours of footage have your clients provided in whittling down to that 6-minute piece of video that we all just watched?
Well, we do not want to get into any work product information. This is a formulation of information that we've done and investigations that we've done, materials that we've accumulated. So I don't want to put a number on what we have because we start getting into attorney work product with regards to the materials that we're going to be using in our litigation. But suffice it to say that we have plenty. Any other questions? Well, I gotta say, I'm quite surprised. We will hang around in case anyone does have questions or need some time to download the video. We're not gonna close it, but if you do have questions, just feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, we wanna thank you for taking the time to come out and to hear the press conference and to relay our information. There is a question asking if I can post a link to the video instead. Let me see if I can post a Dropbox link that should take you to the same place, but give me 1 second. I'll see if I can do that. I've just posted a link that should take you to the Dropbox location. So Samantha, maybe that'll be helpful if you're having problems downloading it. Yes, Claudia, you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to be clear. So some of the reforms that you were talking about aren't possible through litigation, and you said you're working with the council in ways outside of litigation, but I wanted to be clear what exactly inside of the lawsuit. One, it's multiple lawsuits, correct?
Paul, do you want to answer the questions
Sure.
on that?
Yes. So yes, Claudia, there are multiple lawsuits, and we are in fact working with a team of other plaintiffs lawyers, civil rights lawyers in this effort. And I'm not going to comment about the specific proposals or the negotiations at this point, but we're working together with other teams of lawyers as well.
Okay. I guess I was just curious what was possible, but I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.